salamanders are a member of. Wanted to welcome everybody for coming out this morning to our State of the Town, State of the County address and update. And before we get started, wanted to recognize our elected officials that are in attendance. Mayor Dick Sears, here in the front, and Councilwoman Christine Kelly, also in the front. Also wanted to extend a welcome to all the town staff, and I see a handful of my fellow board members on the chamber, so appreciate you all in attendance as well. With that said, we're going to hear from two distinguished gentlemen sitting to my left, and Town Manager Randy Harrington and Wake County Manager David Ellis. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to the boy band over here with the wireless mics.
Hello, test. All right. Okay. Good. Okay, let's start this over one more time. It's great to be here, and one of the things that I realize that oftentimes as residents, you think when you have an issue with something that's related to government, you think of the county and the city and perhaps the state as just one entity. You don't care where your service comes from. You just want it done, and you want it done well. And I'm here to say that even though today you're going to hear two different flavors of the types of services that the city and the county, the town and the county provide, we partner a lot in many ways. And it's really proud for me to be up here with David, an outstanding colleague and a passionate Wake County public servant. And we do a lot of work together, and it's great to be up here sharing the stage with you. And thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for putting this on today, and Justin for the welcome. Justin did do the an introduction of our council members, and one of the things, and our mayor, and one of the things that I'll say here, relative to the presentation that you're going to hear from me today, is really a reflection of the important work that the mayor and council are doing. So you'll hear these pieces based on the work that the council members have done here over the past number of years, over past year. So a little bit about me. I know that some of you are sitting in the audience and you're thinking, I have seen this guy before somewhere, and you can't quite place it. Some of you might be thinking, I think I've seen this guy on TV perhaps. And that would be correct. You might remember me from Dr. Niles Crane from the hit show Frasier. A little bit more like that. I gave up the fame and fortune of Hollywood for a life of public service, and haven't regretted it at all since. So anyhow, but actually, a little bit more about me. I've got close to 20 years of public service experience, and it's great. I've been in Holly Springs now for just over 1 year and 2 days to be exact, and it's been fantastic. My family have really enjoyed being here, and the welcome that many of you have offered to us, and we're really grateful to be here. My wife, Kara, my oldest child, Campbell, there on the left, an 8th grader, Arden, in the middle, she's a 7th or 6th grader, and then Harper, the youngest there, who likes to jump off of furniture into my arms a lot, she's a 2nd grader, so that's my family. But let me get into really what we're going to talk about here today. I think it's fair to say that we all know that in our community, you always have challenges, but I hope that what you walk away from here today is this notion that we really have a wonderful place to live in today. And I think from what you'll see, we're going to be even better tomorrow. And I'd like to walk through and share some of those components today with you. Let's start off with today. We've recently received a number of outstanding accolades, and I won't go through every one, but I think the core elements of these, what they're saying is, number one, we are the safest place in North Carolina to live. That is such an amazing attribute to our community, and one we take a lot of pride in. 2, we're an outstanding place overall to live. We consistently rank within the top 1 to 5 communities in North Carolina as a place to live, and we've been real consistent in that. We also have the #1 local farmers market in North Carolina. We've had that for a number of years. Happens right outside the doors here. A real popular event and occurs throughout the year. We are really proud of all these, and this is a reflection of the commitment that the community has to making this place, again, just a wonderful place to be. When you look at our population, you see a pretty steady increase, really from the early 1990s. And you can generally say that over the recent years, we've been growing at roughly 1,200 to 1,700 new residents per year. And that equates to roughly about a 5.5% growth rate here over the last few years. We're at 38,757. We just updated that figure just a couple weeks ago from our planning and zoning department. When you look at building permits, a lot of the economic activity and growth that's occurring in the community, the 15-year average is about 487 building permits issued. And if you look at the 10-year average, it's about 438. And then the 5-year, the most recent 5-year, about 580. And so you do see the darker bars represent single-family residences, and then the light bluer bars represent multifamily, typically apartments. All right, let me transition just a little bit into our strategic plan, and this is an area that I'm really excited about, and I want to recognize the outstanding work that the mayor and council have done over this past year, working and developing a strategic plan, which is really that roadmap that's guiding us as an organization and as a community for where we're going, and what are those important destinations, so to speak, along the way. And so the foundation of this is built around a vision statement, one vision statement, and then there are 5 priority areas that the mayor and council have said, we're doing a lot of things, but these 5 are the most important for us to focus on as an organization. So when you look at the vision statement, it says Holly Springs offers an unmatched quality of life that reflects the joys of small town living in a safe, family-friendly community that residents and businesses are proud to call home. Then when you look at the priority areas, again, there are 5, and the first one related to economic prosperity and diversity, and these are just in alphabetical order. Holly Springs provides a climate where a wide variety of businesses thrive and with economic opportunity for all. The second area, engaged, healthy, and active community. That Holly Springs promotes a fulfilling and rewarding lifestyle with abundant, healthy living options. Third area, organizational excellence. We want to take pride in the work that we do and do it at a high level. And we're going to be a leader in responsible government with a high-performing organization that meets the public service needs of its residents. And then responsible and balanced growth. The Holly Springs will continue to plan for future infrastructure and support a quality, balanced mix of land uses while preserving a small-town charm, characteristics, and history. And then the final area at the bottom, safe and friendly, that we're going to be one of the safest communities in North Carolina with a welcoming spirit and an inviting atmosphere. So these are the foundational components of, again, that roadmap of where the town, organization, and the community, where we're headed. And I'd invite you, these are, again, the foundational pieces. There are 18 goal statements and 48 initiatives that fall underneath these various elements that describe and put a little bit more meat on the bones in terms of what does this mean and how does it translate into the type of work that we're doing. So I'd certainly encourage you to visit the town's website and you can learn a little bit more about what those additional details are. But again, a real large and important effort that the mayor and council worked on here this past year. I'm also really proud to share some of the work that our internal staff has done. We recently worked on, as an entire organization, all the employees came together and developed a set of core values, those beliefs and behaviors that we feel that are most important to exhibit on a daily basis. And so these weren't derived from me, they were derived from all of our employees and many of them who are sitting here in the audience today. I do want to share those with you. So our commitment to ourselves and our commitment to the community around 5 areas. One, around being accountable. Another one around creativity. Another one around integrity. And then also teamwork. And then one of the core values that I think is really unique and interesting, this notion of compassionate excellence. And that's focused on where we are providing an exceptional service, treating everyone with respect, dignity, and courtesy, while continuously striving to take ourselves and our team to the next levels. Have a unique piece in there, and one that I'm really proud of the work that our staff team did put together. So again, just wanted to share this in terms of so that you know, as an organization, the types of behaviors that we feel are most important, that we want to try to exhibit, we want to exhibit on a daily basis. I'll transition now into a few slides related to some budget highlights from this past spring and early summer. As you can imagine, with the new budget, it does start to implement those strategic initiatives from a resource and policy standpoint. And public safety does remain a top budget investment area, and you'll see on the next slide here that translated into a dollar investment. But again, a very important, as you typically see with a lot of local governments, that public safety is very important. It continued investment in infrastructure. There was a 5-cent property tax rate increase dedicated to pay for the voter-approved 2018 transportation bonds that voters approved this past November. And I think it's important to note that this was only the second property tax rate increase that the council has adopted in the past 25 years. So I think that speaks to a long period of rate stability, and at the same time recognizing that at particular points, those investments for critical areas, in this particular case, all dedicated to infrastructure investment. And then we also want to be an organization that invests in our employees and training, and that we're highly skilled, and we want to be an employer of choice. That was another important component of the budget. And then there were 22 new positions in the budget focused on serving our community, and 11 of those, the majority of those were related to public safety, and even within that, most of those positions going to police. So broken out a little bit different way, if you want to look at where each tax dollar, where each expenditure goes to in our organization, the town's budget is roughly $65 million. And from that, again, you see the public safety component here being the largest section of the budget. We also have Parks and Recreation, debt service, our development, planning, engineering, and code enforcement, our public works, and street maintenance, and refuse collection, yard waste collection, water, and utility debt service, wastewater, stormwater, and then our capital investment. So this is where those taxes and fees go to in the budget. One of the things we also did with the recommended budget is we thought it was important to share a taxpayer receipt. Oftentimes, taxpayers don't have a full understanding of what is the value that you receive from the investments that you make in your local government. And so with this, we looked at taking the median home value in Holly Springs, the median being that midpoint. Half of the home values in Holly Springs are less, and half of the home values in Holly Springs are higher. So you take this middle point, and that comes to $265,000 for the median home value. You see the various components of where those funds go toward. And then over on the right side, this is what that translates to on a daily basis. For about $4.10 per day, you get access and the ability to use all these components. You've got 131 miles of roadways, over 17 miles of greenways, 573 acres of parkland. There's 69 sworn police officers, and where we have a little over 17 per shift, 57 firefighters on duty, 19 per shift during the day. Investment in new roads, parks and recreation and town facilities, your refuse, your recycling collection. So that $4.10, about the price of a grande caramel macchiato at Starbucks. You get access and the ability to have these types of services in your community. So I think that's a strong statement in terms of the value that each of us receive. Let me transition now a little bit into some of the planning for our future. And I'll start off with the revision Holly Springs effort that's going on to update our land use and character plan. This plan essentially spells out what types and the appropriateness for development in certain areas and locations in the town limits and in our extraterritorial jurisdiction. It also speaks to the character or the quality of the types of development that we desire here in the community. Again, to try to maintain our character and who we are and who we have been as a community. Many of you have participated in this effort. We've had a high degree of public engagement. I want to thank many of you who have been there and participated. It's been a really important effort and one that will help shape our community over the next 10, 15, 20 years. Also, the council's been focused on protecting our future, and a couple examples of that include a new tree preservation requirement for new development related to commercial development as well as residential development. And then as well, the formulation of a new tree advisory committee to help guide the replacement and maintenance of trees in our community. In many ways, trees are an important asset and one that we want to protect and ensure that we have for generations to come. I think we can all speak to, particularly this week, the challenges with congestion and with school getting back in gear for traditional school. But we all know that we have a big challenge with transportation. And again, the voters spoke last November and said we want to invest to try to mitigate congestion. We want to improve road connections across the town, and we also want to improve the safety for motorists and pedestrians alike. And so there are 6 particular projects that we envision to be 100% funded by the town, and one of them, the first one here is the Holly Springs Road widening. Many of you have seen some of the survey crews that have been out there over the last couple of weeks if you've driven up Holly Springs Road. We're currently in design phase on that particular one. Number 2, North Carolina 55 highway improvements, adding a turn lane. We are in design on that particular project right now. Main Street right turn lane, so a right turn lane turning on to Holly Springs Road, and that as well is in the design phase. The Estes Lane connection, right there. And this one, we have our first public engagement meeting next week on this. I hope many of you will attend. All the other projects have already had at least one public engagement session so far. Then Avon Ferry Road realignment, right along there. And then Grigsby Avenue improvements here. And those particular projects are, we have not yet let the design components of that, but we're nearing that point to do so. So these are moving. It takes time to implement them, but I can tell you that these early stages are moving and they're moving forward. We also have a handful of projects that we'd like to partner with the state, and essentially we want to bring some funding to the table, and we'd like for the state to bring some funding to the table. These are state roads as well, where we know that the state has an interest in improving. And so we'd like to partner with the state to leverage and extend the impact of those investment dollars. And so again, here we've got Sunset Lake Road, which would be some widening and various improvements along that road. The Holly Springs Road improvements, number 2 there, widening from Main Street down to Highway 55. And then additional lane improvements, right turn lane along the bypass there. Highway 55. So these are the areas that we're hoping to partner with the state, and we're in the process now of, we'll be applying for some applications for funding. It always takes a few years with the state to get in their queue and to solidify those partnerships, but we're working that right now and we're optimistic about those. Also, I know some of you have probably experienced some of the congestion right now out near the Ting Park and some of the road work that's going on with Sportsmanship Way. But this is an important connection to simplify and ease the connection there from Ting Park and as well from Main Street. This is a partnership with the town and the state of North Carolina, NCDOT. This project is moving really, we're a little bit ahead of schedule right now on it, but the scheduled completion on it is March 20, that it should be all completely done and open. But that will help increase our connections there to the bypass. We also have some investments in Parks and Recreation. There are some leftover Parks and Recreation bonds that were approved by voters in 2011, about $8 million. And the mayor and town council over the last half a year have been working on what types of projects would we want to invest those remaining funds in. So there's been a few of them. And the first one, at this particular point, that the council hasn't made a final decision, but the areas that they have identified, we want to target and see if we can do these types of projects. One would be land acquisition west of Highway 55. This is an area of the community that we are deficient in a number of parks and recreation facilities and amenities in this particular area of the town. So we want to try to look at this area. Also, 2 significant greenway segments. One being Holly Glen to Utley Creek. And one of the things that I'm not sure if many of you know, there's a tunnel underneath Highway 55 that will connect this. It's already there right now. And so this would connect into that tunnel and then onto the Utley Creek Greenway and provide an important connection from, again, the west side of town to to the downtown area for residents to bike, walk, etc., and much easier access across the Highway 55. And then Arbor Creek to Sunset Ridge Road, or Sunset Ridge North, Wood Creek to Holly Springs Road. This is an area, one of the important pieces about this is that it connects a gap. The town of Apex also has a greenway that connects right up to where the end will be. And so now we can extend and have this regional connection into Apex, and that'll be an important piece that we're looking at right now. The other thing I'll just mention, or just real briefly, we're also doing a Parks and Recreation master plan update to look at all of our parks, and greenways, and facilities to help plan out over the next 15, 20 years what should be those targeted investments. And that project is initiated and starting here this particular year. I think many of you are aware of the investment that UNC Rex is making in the community. You've seen the work that's going on now between Main and Avon Ferry Road. It is a 50-bed hospital, and they're making great headway on that right now. The targeted completion date is May 2021, and they'll then shortly thereafter hope to begin admitting patients. I think hopefully everybody has also seen the investment in the downtown, in this particular case, for Town Hall Commons with Trustwell Properties. And there are approximately, I think there's 20 units here that would be a mix of restaurants, office, and other businesses, and but an exciting investment here in the downtown area of Holly Springs. There's also the block on Main, and this is an investment from the Baalbeck Property Group, and this is right next to the Town Hall Commons, and I think there's going to be about 15 roughly tenants in this one, and maybe some additional subtenants that'll even grow that even larger. But really exciting. You can see the interaction here with the ability for residents to interact in an amphitheater type area, and perhaps a rooftop restaurant and or bar, which would be really exciting. So some really neat things coming along the way related to the block, which is currently underway right now in downtown Holly Springs. Some of the town infrastructure, these projects are a public-private partnership. And just want to highlight briefly some of the town investments associated with these. One is a traffic signal that will be going up here very soon, here at Main and Valentine. Obviously the parking deck that's behind the Town Hall Commons building. Additional parking behind off of Avon Ferry Road. A little bit of a realignment on Rogers and Main Road. Some construction on Rogers Street with on-street parking on there as well. And then there are 14 additional parking spots there on Avon Ferry Road. And then there's a stormwater retention and stormwater management device down there to manage the stormwater runoff in an environmentally sensitive way. So those are some of the partnership components that the town also brought to the table with the private investment. And also drones, and you'll probably be hearing a little bit more about this here soon, perhaps later in September. This is a project where the federal government is in the NCDOT or piloting efforts to figure out how to appropriately regulate drones all across the United States. And they have selected Holly Springs as one of their test sites. And there's a private company called Flytrex, and then Causey Aviation, which is a partner with them, and then along with the Kite Realty Group to deliver deliver food deliveries. They're going to test this from essentially the kind of the Target area, the shopping center. They're on Highway 55 over to Ting Stadium. So they're going to be doing some their pilot run here, I think, hopefully later here in September. And it's kind of an exciting new venture. Drones are in many ways probably going to be the future of a lot of delivery and other elements in our life, delivering everything from medical supplies to food and perhaps even other areas. So you'll be hearing a little bit more about this, but Holly Springs is simply serving as a host site for that, and it's a pretty unique pilot program that's occurring here in the United States. I hope that many of you have found us on social media, and this is one of the ways that we communicate with our citizens. We have a variety of other ways, but I hope that you and you'll encourage others to sign up for Notify Me notifications, as well as follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, and Instagram it's a great way to connect and for us to help keep you informed about what's going on a daily basis in the town. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for allowing me to be here today and share a little bit about the story of the elements that are making Holly Springs a wonderful place today and where we're headed to here in the future. I'll turn it over to David, and he'll take the county's piece, and then we'll open it up after that for some Q&A and some dialogue and some comments from the audience. So with that, I'm not sure that I see David, but
We're queuing up the next presentation. So
Okay.
in the interim, we can take a couple of questions for the town at this time.
yes.
You mentioned, you talked some about Parks and Rec, but I noticed in your main goals, not once is the word environment mentioned. Is that in the sub-goals under some of those?
There are some goals that relate to sustainability and the tree preservation elements. And so yes, they are woven in. You may not have seen that maybe explicitly stated right on that, but there are absolutely elements of that woven into the strategic plan.
Okay, I know you had mentioned that there were a lot of sub-goals under those. So.
Yeah, good question. Yes.
Is Mims Park still a plan that's in process, or what's the state of that?
There's no right now. There's no particular action for investments in there right now. We do have the master plan for Mims Park, and it's an important component, obviously, of the downtown area. And right now, that was one of the areas that was contemplated as part of the remaining Parks and Rec bonds. And I know that the mayor and council had a lot of conversation about it at this particular point. The feeling was to invest in some of these other areas where we felt like right now there's a little bit higher need, but we do have that plan, and there is an intention and a hope to fulfill that at some point down in the future.
So in the plan, you had an area in the southwest corner of where you were going to develop. I think you said some trails, greenway type things on Park possibly. Is there any notion to connect Holly Springs with Bass Lake Park through a greenway or anything like this?
Yes, and this might be one that I might ask, I'll phone a friend, perhaps, Leanne Plummer, who's our Parks and Recreation Director. She could maybe comment just a little bit better on some particular connections in that area.
Yeah, so there is an overall greenways master plan. As you know, as development comes in, we're doing certain segments and components. We will be revisiting. There's been so much development that has occurred, and so that greenway plan is a little bit dated. But yes, this idea of connecting Bass Lake to downtown to even Fuquay, there are some future plans and maps that show that. But again, we're kind of waiting as development comes in to seize those opportunities. And as we mentioned, the updated master plan will also revisit that greenways master plan to make sure that we're not reacting to, but really being more proactive in our planning as development is occurring, that we're really taking advantage of those greenways connections. So you need to be a little bit patient. Again, there are pieces out there, and I think 2 of the greenways that we've shown that will be funded with a bond will really make some great connections, but there's still more to come. So hang tight, and also I'm going to encourage you to participate as we start developing that updated master plan and that greenway plan. We need a lot of community input because I know a lot of people are supportive and looking for those greenway connections. So it's coming. Be patient.
And one additional clarification, and I showed that map and it kind of circled an area in the western part. The intention there is to have a passive park, and so right now it's not envisioned to be soccer fields and ballparks in that particular area, but more passive nature style of park. Any other questions? Even though you don't hear about it a lot, we have a lot of engagement with our partners in Wake County, as well as the state, in terms of groups and international groups that are looking at coming and interested in this particular area. So every day, just about, we are talking with businesses about the possibilities of coming. It's one of these things where it's a little bit like fishing. You know there's fish in the lake there, and you're trying to catch that big one. And we've caught some big ones here in town, notably Securus, a great component in our community, and we are actively working to land some others. So, yeah, a real highly concentrated effort on that front. Yes.
So a year ago, you were just joining us, and I know, imagine the new job, you've got expectations. How how's that first year gone for you, and what's the future for, that you see, as opposed to a year ago when you were just going?
Yeah, right. I have been really amazed at, let me first start with, some of you in the past, and particularly when I got here, I talked a lot about this is a community with a lot of momentum. And for me, that was really attractive to want to be part of a community that had this type of momentum and the quality of life that we have. And while I knew it when I applied and started, I have such a greater appreciation for what this community is and what it's come from. You think about, you look on that slide, in 1990 we had 908 residents in the community, and today we have almost 39,000. I'm not sure that there's another community in North Carolina that's had that level of transformation over that period of time. And so I have really, I think, really, it's deepened my understanding and appreciation for where this community has come from and where it's going. And I'm really, I'm bullish on, so to speak, on where we're going and where we're headed. I think the strategic plan in particular is a really outstanding piece of work that the mayor and council have worked on that really got, I think they have captured really those key elements that will help our trajectory and continue to make us a great place and get us into that next stage. We are, in some ways, transitioning a little bit from a, we're getting to be a little bit more of a medium-sized type town. And with that, how do we update and how do we plan for that and how do we adjust? And that's what we're going through right now as an organization. So, a lot of great things. I'm really grateful to be here. And every day I walk into work and I'm super excited to go. I think my staff will tell you that. And we're doing a lot of great things, and we've got really talented folks at the town who are making it happen. There's everything. Great. Excellent. I thought I was going to have to start to tell a joke or something to buy a little bit more time. So I'll turn it over to Dave Ellis, our county manager for White County.
Thank you, sir. Great job. It's working. So first of all, I want to thank my two friends up there in the back who really made this happen. We were having a little bit of technical difficulty, but they really came through, and so you won't have to listen to me just go on and on. We'll actually have some pretty pictures up here. So first of all, Randy, Mayor Sears, Council, thank you for inviting me back out this year. It was a pleasure to come last year. I'm a little lighter, as the mayor mentioned. The commissioners are working me hard, so I'm just losing weight left and right. But look forward to just sharing with you a little bit about the county. And as Randy mentioned, we partner quite a bit with Holly Springs and all of the municipalities, and so I'm glad to be out here with you. Randy mentioned the strategic plan for Holly Springs. The county has our board goals, and our commissioners here. And the board goals were developed a few years ago, and they kind of drive our priorities within the organization. As you can see, there's 7 of them. I'm not going to go through them, but I'll touch on them a little bit during the presentation. The county, as you know, a few years ago, we went over the 1 million mark. We're at 1.1 million now. Still continuing to grow at a pretty decent clip right now. We're growing at about 56 people a day. It varies from 56 to 64 depending on what year you're looking at. But right now we're about 56 per day. And when I checked, I believe Holly Springs was growing by about 25 people a week. And you can kind of see 4 new residents a day. You can kind of look and see where all the growth is occurring in Wake County, and it's pretty much occurring everywhere. Which leads us to the census. I'm sorry, East Carolina? You stole my football coach from James Madison. I'm sorry, I just got distracted whenever I see that. That's still painful, so I'll get back there. That's okay. Okay. So the census, we have a complete count committee with for the census. It's led by Commissioner Vicki Adamson. We have representatives from all the municipalities. We have nonprofits involved. For us, this is a serious undertaking. We want to make sure that we get the correct count we get the correct count for the county, because a lot rides on that. There's about $675 billion in federal funds that are out there based on populations. There could be changes in the Senate based on the population. And so when you talk about the growth that's going to occur in the county, we really want to make sure that we have the correct numbers. One of the things that, so you'll be hearing more about this committee. Commissioner Adamson will probably be talking to you all. If you're having events, there'll probably be some folks from the Complete Count Committee coming out to the events, encouraging people to fill out the form when they come out. This piece is pretty interesting. We added more than the populations of Cary and Apex in 10 years. And so right now, for those of us who would like to be around, I believe in 2035, that's when we're scheduled to hit 2 million people in Wake County. And it sounds like it's a long ways off, but it's not. And so part of making sure that the county is prepared for that, for the continued influx of people, is to really look at making sure we have the infrastructure in place. And part of that is making sure we're receiving the federal dollars that are allocated based on our population and population growth. I want to spend a little bit of time about the tax increase. Randy and I talked about this. The county had a significant tax increase this year, and everyone kind of heard the 10%. And want to spend a little bit of time just kind of going through what made up that tax increase. 6.63% of the tax increase were from voter-approved bonds, and I'll talk a little bit about those 3 bonds. And then when you look at, the total tax increase was 6.63%. 3.8% of that was based on the actual bonds that were approved, and there was another 2.83% that we'll talk a little bit about went between the schools and the county. One of the things is growth doesn't pay for itself. While we're growing at a tremendous clip, the impact on infrastructure, the impact on our schools, on services that are provided, it just doesn't meet the demand. The 3 bonds that were approved in November totaled, I believe this is the highest bond total in North Carolina of $1 billion, over $1 billion. And so how that 2.83 cent, which was the additional tax increase, 1.98 cent, close to 2 cent went to the schools, another 8.5 cent went towards county operations. And some of the things we did with county operations, our EMS department noticed that they were starting to have more and more time where we didn't have a minimum number of ambulances available for calls. And I always tell people, I wake up in the morning now and I look at, turn the news on, and usually the first thing I see is traffic. Since I've been here, it seems like almost every day now there's an accident somewhere in the morning and in the afternoon. And so we have to, our EMS providers respond to those accidents out there. So over time, we've just gotten to a point where we did not have enough ambulances ready to go. And the other part is we could have 3 ambulances available, but they could be in the north part of the county, and we could have accidents and issues in the southern part of the county. And so really looking at right-sizing that department, we did that. We added 20 positions as well as 5 new EMS vehicles so that they could do their job. One of the other things that the board has been committed to, as you saw in the board goals, was housing affordability and workforce housing. And one of the things that when you look at the total population, you can see where we're projected to be in 2035. And what we found out, we had a study a couple of years ago where we brought in a consultant, is that it's a simple supply and demand. We just don't have enough units for the number of people that are coming here. And so developers are building as quickly as they can, but right now there's a significant shortage, and there's a significant shortage for people who are making $39,000 and less. And so for those of you who have your own companies, you think about admin staff, you think about some of our public safety staff. You can talk about some of our school and school support staff. Those are the folks who may be renting right now, but if someone comes along, if the landlord decides that they want to sell, it's going to be difficult for them to find affordable, something that they can afford that's still in proximity to where they live now. And so the board in FY20 is the second year of commitment of $15 million for housing affordability to increase the supply of housing, help people find transitional and permanent housing, and to continue to work with our partners to prevent homelessness. One of the things that we'll talk about is just the number of new units that we were able to have approved by the North Carolina Housing Tax Credit Financing Department. But in order to get to this point, and I don't think we had done it yet last year when I was here, I made a decision to pull out our housing division. We had, I think, maybe 15, maybe 20 people in our housing division, but they were in human services. And I felt like this is a broader discussion than just human services. So we pulled it out, created a department, and searched high and low for a director to come in and kind of take over and right the ship. And Lorena McDowell is our housing director, and she has come in with a bang. She has lots of experience from Atlanta to Northern Virginia and places in between. She's been a realtor, she's run a nonprofit. She has kind of the full scope of housing and understands the need. She's very astute and has been working with some of the developers as well as others to get them to participate in our housing affordability program. One of the things we learned a couple of years ago is that, even if you're building, if you continue to lose housing, affordable housing, you're just barely keeping your head above water. And so she's actually been working with folks where tax credits are expiring to see if they would be willing to partner with a nonprofit and potentially sell that so that we can keep some units affordable. And so this year, she made some changes to our to the program. Last year, the county received 192 new units through tax credits with the state. This year, it increased to almost triple to 563 units. Plus, there's another 40 units that will actually allow substantial rehab to existing affordable housing. And these are just some of the benefits. Children in stable homes are more likely to perform better in school, more money for basic needs, and economy benefits from jobs and local income and property tax. Lindsay, this is for you.
All right.
So as you saw in the board goals, education is extremely important to the Board of Commissioners, and they have made significant investments in education. So I talked about the bond and just want to spend a little time on that. The bond that was approved was $548 million over 2 years, and you can see what it's going to fund. And my recollection is that the majority of the funds are for renovations of existing schools. And some new schools will be built, but really looking at how do we renovate our existing schools, make them safer, make them areas where children can continue to learn. The county also funds some of the operating budget for the school system. This year was the first year that we actually funded over $500 million in operating funds for the school system. And so our transfer to the school system this year was $519 million. Another aspect of the bonds, parks, greenways, and open space. That's part of Wake County. Making sure folks have places to go out, enjoy nature, participate, bike ride, walk trails, really enjoy themselves outdoors. And so there was a $120 million bond over 6 years for parks, greenways, and open space. And here you can kind of see where some of the parks are. And I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read it, but you can just kind of see we're trying to make sure that we have parks spread out throughout the county and opportunities for folks throughout. The bond will fund some new parks, existing parks. One of the things we're looking at is, we've added 100 acres, adding 100 acres at Crowder Park, which would take that up to about 300 acres and really make that a place, a continued place where people want to go and enjoy. And there's Crowder. I was here the other night at the invitation of Randy and the mayor, and had some discussion about the landfill, and I get it, because I will tell you this morning coming in, I was at the light at Target, and I said, is this what they're talking about? And it was. You guys are absolutely right. So I'm going to talk to John when I get back, and I understand, empathize. I can't stand up here, and I won't stand up here and tell you I'm going to get rid of all the odor that's coming from there, but I am committed, as I said the other night, to making sure that John Roberson has the resources to look at what are best practices in other places and trying to bring them here to the county so we can at least begin to mitigate that odor, because I get it. I whispered to Randy when I first got here, I said, maybe I shouldn't ask you this. I said, but I was sitting at the stoplight, and he's like, yeah. So I'm glad I came out this morning. But we also offer landfill tours, and these are public tours. Here are the dates if you're interested in participating in a tour and kind of getting the full picture of what goes on at the landfill. Here are some dates. Also, if those dates don't work for you, if you call, they will set up some small individualized tours for folks. So I mentioned to you just about the importance of keeping our neighbors safe with EMS and our CCBI. In addition to just the lack of not having enough ambulances ready, which we've addressed, you can see EMS has had a significant increase in calls from 2014 to 2018, so almost 20% increase in calls. And so we had to really right-size that organization to make sure that they can keep up with the growth in the county. Another thing that the board is proud of is their work on behavioral health. Many of you, if you follow the news, there's been a lot of conversation about behavioral health and the lack of resources. And so the county has been working diligently, especially when we realize that 1 out of 5 individuals potentially could have some type of mental health illness. And one of the things the county implemented this year was a behavioral health care urgent center. So similar to an urgent care center, if you sprain your ankle and you don't want to go sit in a hospital, you can hit an urgent care center. For folks who maybe on the weekends or evenings, they run out of medication, they need something, they need to be seen quickly, they're feeling anxious. We're piloting our first urgent care center, opened up about 2 months ago, and so hopefully by this time next year, we'll have some results to come back and share with you. But we really feel like that's the best practice. We've also been working with some of our nonprofits. So if it's a call comes into dispatch and it can be determined that it may be a behavioral health issue, in addition, some type of social worker will go out with our EMS staff and try to make connections with folks, particularly when we have issues around issues around opioids and other things. Having a peer counselor go out with and kind of make that initial connection and try to help folks get into some type of treatment. The economy's growing great. We heard a couple weeks ago that had 17 million visitors last year, and $2.7 billion spent on tourism, which was a record for Wake County. We're in the process now of looking at the interlocal funds, which are funds from the hotel motel tax that all kind of go into a pot, and then projects are evaluated in terms of their return on investment and where those dollars might go. And so some of the things that we're looking at, the boards are looking at the Raleigh Convention Center, expansion of that, if so, when, and Duke Energy Center for Performing Arts, PNC Arena, and you all probably have heard all about this potential soccer stadium. And one of the things we're looking at is, having a feasibility study on the soccer stadium to determine a number of factors. One, if this area can support another large venue such as the soccer stadium that's being proposed, but also looking at how the stadium may impact some of our existing venues out there. So we want to get a really good picture of that. And so those are some of the things you've probably heard about and you'll continue to hear about over the next few weeks. The number of companies have relocated. I think we've had 17 companies relocate to Wake County, but we've also had a number of companies who expanded their operations here in Wake County. So from an economic development standpoint, things are good. People want to come here. The quality of life, we try to focus on the quality of life here is really good compared to other places. I've lived in Northern Virginia and I will not go back. This is where I want to be. It's the quality of life here, you just can't beat it. And so that's kind of my presentation. Thank you guys again for really making this happen. I know it was a challenge, so thank you. And questions, and I'll try to answer. And if I can't, I'll get back to you. Yes, sir.
I'm kind of curious as to why growth doesn't pay for itself. I mean, if you're expanding your population, you're expanding your tax base significantly, if you're adding commercial, enterprises and so on, why doesn't the additional tax revenue that those all generate pay for the growth in services?
So the tax revenue just is not enough to expand. So and a lot of times the tax revenue is lagging behind. And so when a family moves here, I'd say they have 3 kids, they move here. If they haven't found a house right off the bat, then they're typically renting. I think that it typically takes a family somewhere between, let's say, 16 and 24 months if they move here to find a place to purchase in many cases. But those kids go to school immediately. Families are on the roads immediately. EMS calls, all that stuff happens. It doesn't necessarily happen after the revenues come in. And so there are just a number of things. And in North Carolina is a little different in that the counties and municipalities bear a lot of those costs. The state contributes some, but with the growth, the counties have to kind of chip in. I'll give you an example. We receive funding from the state for like child protective services for a certain level. But our population is so much in the number of calls that the county has to provide the additional funding for those social workers to do those jobs. But that's a fair question. It's a tough thing to kind of comprehend because you hear about all the growth, you hear about the companies coming here, you hear about people moving here, but it just doesn't generate the revenue that's necessary. Yes, sir.
A slide a while back, it had the population growth rate and the ambulance call growth rate. Doing that right, the ambulance call growth rate is about 40% higher, outpacing the population growth rate. That seems to mean, do you know why there's that much of an increase in ambulance call?
So I would say one, more traffic, more accidents. And we're also, we hear a lot about growth in, but out of the 56 people a day, about 21 of them are births. So we do focus a lot on children, but we also have had an expanding elderly population here in Wake County. And so a number of those calls are folks who are elderly, as well as some who just don't have insurance and they aren't necessarily going through preventive care, that type of thing. And so when something happens, it's an immediate call. But I will tell you what we're starting to see are number of calls in the morning, number of calls in the afternoon. So as people get off work and people are heading to work. Yes, sir.
Y'all both have mentioned about keeping the tax rate stable, but the valuations have been going up at 5% plus per year. Mm-hmm. So after 5 years, our taxes have gone 5%. The house I lived in for 10 years has had more than a 50% increase in tax before you start adding on to any of the tax rate increases. Why isn't that valuation increase paying for these increases in services and whatnot that you're saying are so necessary? It's a big number.
Yeah. So the valuation is based on the market. So this is what the market is, when our folks go out and look, this is what the market is telling us your home is worth. So your tax, so your valuation has increased, or the value of your home has increased based on, but that only happens for Wake County every 4 years. What you've seen over the past few years is an increase in your actual tax rate.
Well, over a 10-year period,
Mm-hmm.
it adds up to a 50% cost increase.
Okay.
And if you live in the same house, you're not seeing that increase in value. All you're seeing is the increase in tax.
Right.
The cost of living.
Mm-hmm.
That's providing a pretty healthy pot with which to continue operations. And the county is 2.8% of this latest increase goes just to pay for additional operations.
Mm-hmm.
What about all that money you're getting from the increase in the valuation?
Well, so out of that, the 2.8, about 2 cents going to the school system, making sure that they have what they need to educate our children. 0.8 or whatever it was, 0.83 cent is going into county operations. And so with the actual growth, it's just not enough to cover. Yeah.
David, to your comment, and Mr. Russo, like in the particular case of the town, I noted that the tax rate increase, the one that recently occurred this year, was the second time in 25 years. In the interim periods there, where there was a revaluation of all the county properties, in those other years, what occurred was council going back to what's called a revenue neutral tax rate. And what that means is it's a tax rate that generates, from a total standpoint, the same, roughly the same amount of revenue that occurred before the overall valuation. And so now within that, what that means is the town receives about the same, but individual homeowners might receive, a little bit less or a little bit more. But that's what that term is it's the term of art, so that the total is roughly the same. But you may have experienced some individual and other homeowners some individual changes within that context, if that makes sense.
We'll talk another time.
Sure.
Thanks, Andy. Yes.
And this is more thinking just in line to the town communication with the state in terms of some of the road improvements, thinking about 55 and the traffic issues. Are there any reports or data from the ambulance services being able to travel through town based on the traffic issues we're having that be used to support that?
I believe there are. I believe we just moved to a new system that's really looking at real-time data in terms of traffic, which allows our folks to, if they're headed out and there's an accident, they can get rerouted. But we're just really starting to implement that can kind of show where those issues are. And that'll go a long way to establishing kind of where we place new EMS sites. Technology is good. Yes, sir.
Can you talk about any initiatives you have between the county and the town where you're kind of trying to cross-utilize services like EMS and police?
Mm-hmm.
County's responsible for its territory, town's responsible for its, but that creates real, I would say, problems where the county has to continuously try to get around the town to provide services. Are there initiatives where you share some of that function?
It's a good question. Not that I can think of offhand, but what I've noticed since I've been here is there is a strong working relationship between all of the managers. And so if Randy has something, Randy's approached me, if they're working on something where the county could be a partner in it, particularly around parks and different things, then we'll look for those opportunities. We've done that in other places with housing affordability. And you really have folks focused on what's in the best interest of the region, and which has been very helpful. And so there's not, other than parks, that's what comes up to me initially.
Yeah, well, maybe the poster child for that is this particular building. Half of it is a county library, and half is the town's cultural center, which is a great partnership. But yes, Parks and Recreation. You heard me mention earlier about the greenway extensions, and the county has some bond money related to that, and we're going to be in this process and working with the county that maybe we can get some of that funding to help begin to leverage our funding. Public safety is another area that we have a high level of coordination, particularly with the sheriff's department. And you're right, there are some pockets within the town that are actually in the county. They're not part of the town, but we work together, our police department and the county, to respond. Fire as well. The county funds fire district coverage in the unincorporated areas of the county, but yet the town also supports and works with the county to help cover some of those areas, and there's a funding component with that. So I think that the key thing is, one, that we do partner whenever we see an opportunity to do that, and two, we don't want to duplicate what we're doing. That's wasteful of taxpayer funding, and we want to be good stewards of those. So we try to work together as much as we can.
Do the police have authority, the town police have authority in the county at all? Or if they go outside of town limits, do they still have authorities?
Generally, yes.
Yeah, yes, we have
so
a
police chief.
So it's
John
a
Harry.
mutual aid agreement that we have with the county, and a lot of times if they have, if their units are far enough away where it's extended, they'll call us and we can respond, and they're covered by that mutual aid agreement.
Thank you.
And one of the things, maybe just to simplify it, this is an overgeneralization, and if David doesn't agree with this, I'll let him correct me. Oftentimes, what you hear is counties are generally in what you think of as the soft services type of area, and towns and cities are in the hard services. It's infrastructure, police and fire, those types of elements. And so, we try not to overlap what we're doing.
One area where we work close, emergency management. Our emergency management folks work closely with the town in case of disasters or pre-planning or post-recovery as those types of issues come forward. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering if you could talk about, and this is kind of a joint question, about a little more about what Holly Springs is doing in terms of housing affordability. And for housing units, you were saying that Wake County has a big initiative to develop, I think it was over 500 affordable housing units, but I recently saw that both Apex and Holly Springs have the highest average rental rates in all of Wake County. Those two towns. I think Apex #1, Holly Springs #2. So with all the growth coming in, especially with things like EMS and needing new police force, bigger, more school personnel, things like that, what is Holly Springs looking to do in terms of affordable housing?
Can we start now? Okay.
Let me start.
Okay, you start.
I think your answer will be perfect. So part of the $15 million that the county is putting to housing affordability, the reality of it is a lot of the funding will be utilized for projects in the municipalities when they're ready to look at those types of options, because you all control what zoning, you all have land use planning, and so we're looking to partner with the municipalities to implement something, not dictate the work as partners together.
Thank you, David. In the new strategic plan, there is an initiative in there around identifying what some potential goals, specific action items could be related to this, because you're right that it's an area that is growing in terms of the need and the concern and the dialogue in the community. It's a tough issue to solve, but one of the things that we have been working on, and one, at least out of the gate, is identifying and understanding exactly what it is and the issue, the nature of the issue in our community. One of the particular areas that's a little bit interesting with us is that we have a lot of single-family housing. You saw from the chart, we are getting some more multifamily housing, but we don't have much inventory of duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes that might provide another option in some different price points and still have some great character and within the town. So those are the types of things that we're looking at, and within this new land use plan and character update, we're looking at that and recognizing that importance and what it means for our community going forward.
And I think one of the things, that Randy's absolutely correct, you know, one of the things to remember is that housing affordability will look different depending on where you reside. So what Raleigh may have for housing affordability may not look the same as Apex, and Apex may not look the same as Holly Springs, and Holly Springs may not look the same as something else. And so we spent a year with the group kind of, and part of it was really getting an understanding of what housing affordability means and how do we move forward with implementing it. Yes, sir.
So let's get back to chat about the landfill for a second. So
Yes, sir.
It opened about 10 or 11 years ago, I believe. And when it opened, they said it would have about a 35-year lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
The area has grown at a much faster rate than what was estimated when that landfill was created. Have they created a new timeline for how long that landfill will remain open?
They have, and I'm trying to recall, it was discussed the other night. So part of what has occurred during the Great Recession, people stopped throwing stuff away. So take that into account and take into account now more recycling. So the lifespan has been stretched out, I want to say by like another 5 or 6 years, but I can get that to you. I just can't recall off the top of my head. So
2043?
2043, yeah. So that has been expanded based on, I think, recycling as well as the recession. Again, it could pick up and change, but right now it's looking at 2043. One of the things that was the mayor brought up was the incinerator option. And so, you know, we're gonna begin. Our folks are continuing to look at all options, but really to get the board into the loop on what's out there and what are some steps or recommendations that we would have.
Is it safe to say that through you and his realization that it's a big problem here that might not even be here as bad as it is?
So I think that was one of the things that came out of the meeting. I mean, I think, and John talked about the amount of rainfall and wind and those types of things maybe contributing to it. But, you know, I'm with you. You know, I get it. And so, you know, I want to make sure we do what we can to kind of try to mitigate some of that.
Is there a short-term plan to help with the odor review?
Yes, and we can get you that. John talked about there are a number of things that they're implementing or beginning to implement at the site. And so that's kind of the short term. They're constantly looking for ways to improve. And what I want to make sure of is that as we look at those ways to improve, what are the outcomes or what are the results? You know, are we seeing some change? Because I understand trying different things, but if we're not seeing any change, then we need to kind of reevaluate. Yes, sir.
What's the latest on 540 and how that impacts the town and?
You know, I'll start on that. Right now, the North Carolina Turnpike Authority are working through their property acquisition process. That's where they're in the stage that they are right now. They have the set alignment, and Kendra Parrish can maybe help me with the timing here, but they'll probably start constructing approximately what years? Early 2020s, 2021? So end of 21, 2022 is when you'll probably see actual construction occur. And it's about a 5-6 year build roughly. But I think it's fair to say that the area near Kildare Farm Road and Holly Springs Road, Sunset Lake Road, there's going to be a pretty significant interchange there. And that will certainly impact and shape development in that particular area of the community. So that's, I don't know if that helps a little bit there, Tom, in terms of kind of where they are right now.
So is this where we do our Backstreet Boy dance?
Yeah, I know, right? I feel left out. I don't have Well, Thank you so much for coming here this morning and allowing us to share a little bit about what our two respective boards are working on and what's going on in our communities. And David, thanks for the opportunity to partner.
Thank you all for inviting me.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, everyone, thank you so much. On behalf of the Holly Springs Chamber of Commerce, the town of Holly Springs, and Wake County, we thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we hope that you're able to attend to some of the light business fair that's waiting for you outside as well. Thank you once again. Have a great day.
Thank you.